We have often heard the UDA party and Deputy President William Samoei Ruto complaining about unfair press coverage. I believe even a few days ago, there was an official complaint from the handlers of the Deputy President. Now today I'm going to shock some of you. There is no such thing as unfair press coverage. That is a myth. It does not exist. And I'm sure the Deputy President and his team understand this very well. It is the same game they play on this channel, in the comments area. When they ask me to be balanced, what actually they mean is that go easy on the negative aspects of the Deputy President, which are many. So what they mean is that I take another candidate, Wajakoya or Raila, and then I find negative points in them before I go and mention one of the many very negative aspects that could impact negatively on the country called Kenya if we were to elect William Samoei Ruto. Put simply, if I discover two negative aspects about William Ruto, I go and dig and dig and dig and look for two that Raila has, or two that the weed-loving professor has. Yeah, that to them is a balanced analysis. Of course, I don't agree, because nobody did a balanced analysis, yeah, on Winston Churchill versus Adolf Hitler. Yeah, two characters who are around at the same time, yeah, and in combat against each other. How do you do a balanced analysis? Anyway, let us bust this myth today of this thing called balanced coverage. Now, some older members of this channel will know is that I've worked as a journalist within Kenya and outside Kenya. And even more important, I was in the boiler room of making decisions. Yeah, not necessarily as the boss. Yeah, once assisting the boss, once running my own newspaper. And so you can be confident that what you're getting today is inside information. And let us start by making a very clear distinction between government-owned, sponsored, financed media and private media. Okay? Now in Kenya, our media is dominated by privately owned media houses. Now most of you who work for private companies will know what I'm talking about when I tell you that a privately owned newspaper, for instance, has to turn a profit. It can't exist without turning profits. But it's not only that. There are the day-to-day needs for cash to keep the newspaper running. And therefore it is not fiction to imagine the following conversation going on in a newspaper in Kenya very regularly. The finance person comes over to the editor and tells them, you know, it's almost end month. we don't have salaries. We are short of cash. So make sure that these last few newspapers of the month sell as much as possible so that we can get some cash flow going. It'll not be enough, but we've got a small overdraft with the bank. Then we should be able to make the wage bill. And so the editor has to produce a newspaper that sells. Now, what kind of newspaper sells? The kind of newspaper that understands the public, and especially the current public mood, to create news items and headlines that will sell. And make no mistake about it, newspaper editors are always talking to the circulation boys. I almost call them boys. We're so used to that on this channel. The two are always constantly talking. And so I can imagine currently, you will hear the finance people saying, "Your headline ya Wajakoya iliuza kuuza. Please, can we have more Wajakoya headlines? Please, we need the money. You know our situation is not very good, our cash situation." And then on another day, you will hear the following conversation. "Your headline ya Ruto haikuuza. So many returns. The public didn't respond to that. The public did not respond to that one nicely. So please, avoid Ruto headlines." Folks, it is a jungle out there. And only the fittest survive. That is the truth. Now, the other side of the story is that many of us gauge the public mood, what is really going on, based on newspaper headlines, what newspapers are saying. A good newspaper is supposed to be a reflection of the public mood currently. And so you have one camp in our current politics that is very concerned about perception. And they also have this information. And therefore they want to push for as much coverage as possible. They want to push for as much attention as possible, so that that perception that this particular camp is very popular countrywide remains. It is vital for them. Maybe it's the only thing they have, the perception. Now, in recent times, when the Deputy President launched his manifesto, the UDA Kenya Kwanza manifesto, it was the same day that the weed-loving professor launched his. Now, even if you're not going to vote for Jakoya, would you be curious to know something about his manifesto? What he proposes to do? Exactly the way he plans to sell snake venom to get us out of debt? Wouldn't you like to know? If anything else, it is pure entertainment. It may not mean that you'll vote for him, but it is entertainment. I recently made a trip right across the country using public means. Naivasha, Nakuru, Eldoret, Kakamega, etc., etc. And I was totally amazed about the thinking of the common man. Folks, it is all Wajakoya. Now, of course, you and I may get very disgusted about what the weed-loving professor is suggesting and proposing. But you and I have only one vote. Those people down there who are fed up with the status quo will not agree with us. And there are many. Therefore, you can imagine how many newspapers you will sell if your headline after the manifesto manenos, the two manifestos, has something to do with Ruto's fiscal policy. What does that mean? The common man will ask. Fiscal ni nini? Ni physical exercises. And even those who have been to school and they know exactly what you're referring to will be bored. But you put our Jakoya headline, that newspaper will move like hotcakes. Now the truth is, over that particular period, Wajackoyah got much more airtime than the deputy president. Indeed, the weed-loving professor drowned William Samoei Ruto completely as far as airtime is concerned and press coverage. And so tell me, was that unfair? Was the media paid by the weed-loving professor to drown the deputy president? I doubt. Because the person with the money is the deputy president. Right? Folks, it was all about economics. And the brutal jungle where people have to survive. Nothing to do with unfair press coverage. Now, of course, it is very possible to bribe people in the press to give you prominence. And indeed, a lot of that has been going on. However, that particular move is not sustainable. By the way, somebody has said that the fact that Wajackoyah released his manifesto, launched it, on the same day the deputy president was launching his, is further conclusive evidence that Wajackoyah is an Azimio candidate, yule wa chini ya maji, who has been put there to dilute, water down, make to disappear the deputy president's votes, especially amongst the youth, younger Kenyans. And the truth is, I have to agree. Anyway, I think you've now seen my point. Unfair press coverage is a myth. It does not exist. Not in a country controlled by privately owned media houses, who have to survive, who have to make a profit. There is no way they're going to do that without responding directly to the mood of the public. Let me give you one final brutal example. There's a presidential candidate called Mwaura. How many newspapers do you think the nation would sell if they had a headline that had something to do with Mwaura? With all due respect to that presidential candidate. Another question. How many newspapers do you think would be sold if the headline had something to do with Raila, for instance? Okay? And my last question is, what do you think the newspaper sales would look like with a headline that had something to do with Deputy President William Samoei Ruto? Answer those questions for yourself. I have left out the weed-loving professor because his headlines sell like hotcakes. Okay? And it doesn't mean that everybody who buys those newspapers is going to vote for him. No. Curiosity, excitement, entertainment, comedy, etc., etc. Unajua, aka kakitu, tukiuza aka kakitu, hii deni na China itaisha. I'm telling you, pure comedy. Churchill uko na kompe mbaya sana. Hautatoboa. This guy is pure humor. But I also think, I'm beginning to believe, that in a free, fair and credible election, it is very possible to have the runner-up being the weed-loving professor. That is how much is loved on the ground. Now, a few of you have shot me very angry emails. Yeah. Of course, you're insinuating that I love the weed-loving professor. Now, as an analyst, you don't analyze your likes and dislikes. You don't create videos based on what you like most. Nobody will be interested. You do exactly what a newspaper does. You focus on where the public attention is. You focus on what the public loves. Yeah, that's the only way to get your message across. Not on what you love yourself. I learned that lesson decades ago when I started my career in journalism. And especially when I was let into the boiler room where the decisions were made, where people are sweating, not because of the heat, yeah, natural heat, but because of the financial heat, yeah, pure economics. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.